I used to think decisions were supposed to feel clear, like something clicks and suddenly you just know. You know what to do, and everything before that finally makes sense. That's what I was waiting for. Not a change, a signal. I imagined it would feel stronger, more confident, like clarity arriving all at once, instead of slowly slipping in without announcing itself. So I waited. I stayed where I was and told myself I was being patient, responsible, careful. I thought waiting meant I was preparing, but most days it just felt like standing still and not calling it that. Nothing around me was falling apart. My life looked stable enough. It worked. There was no urgency, no obvious reason to move, and somehow that made everything harder. Because when nothing is wrong, you don't really get permission to change. There's no dramatic moment, no clear reason. No one tells you, okay, now it makes sense to leave this behind. So I started postponing things quietly. Small things, conversations, decisions that didn't seem important enough to rush. I kept telling myself I'd come back to them later, when I felt more ready, when things felt clearer, when something inside me finally settled. But that moment never came. Time just kept moving instead. Weeks passed, seasons changed. I noticed the world shifting before I noticed myself. I wasn't unhappy. That was the strange part. I was just slightly disconnected from my own days, like I was watching myself live them from a small distance. Everything worked, but nothing felt chosen. At some point I realized I was waiting for a version of myself that never showed up. The one who feels sure, decisive, certain. I thought that version would arrive first, and then I'd act, but it didn't work that way. Most of the decisions I thought I was avoiding weren't blocked by fear. They were blocked by comfort. Comfort doesn't ask questions. It doesn't push you. It lets you stay exactly where you are for as long as you want. And staying doesn't always feel like being stuck. Sometimes it feels like rest. Sometimes it feels practical. Sometimes it just feels easier than making things complicated. I didn't feel trapped. I felt reasonable. And that's why everything moved so slowly. I kept telling myself that if something really mattered, I'd feel it more clearly, that it would announce itself, that it would be obvious, but nothing did. There was no moment where everything lined up, no inner speech, no push, just days that felt a lot like the ones before them. Then one evening, something small happened. Nothing dramatic, nothing important on the surface. I noticed that I wasn't waiting anymore, not because I made a big decision, but because I stopped postponing one small thing. It wasn't a leap, it was barely a step. I didn't feel brave, I didn't feel certain, I just realized I was already moving, and that surprised me. I saw that I hadn't needed clarity first, I had needed motion. Not action for the sake of action, just movement without negotiating with myself every step of the way. I didn't reframe my life. I didn't commit to a new identity. I didn't promise myself anything. I simply stopped asking if I was ready. That question had been slowing everything down. I used to think readiness was something you reached, but it turned out to be something you notice after you've already started. Nothing changed dramatically after that. My life didn't split into a before and after. Most people wouldn't have noticed anything. But I felt less suspended, less paused, like something inside loosened its grip, quietly, without making a scene. I stopped narrating every possible outcome in advance, stopped evaluating everything before it even happened, stopped waiting for certainty to approve my next move. I still hesitated sometimes. I still had doubts, but they didn't stop me completely anymore. I realized that many of the decisions that felt big only felt that way because I had been standing still for so long. Movement makes things smaller, more manageable, human-sized again. I didn't find a new direction that day. I didn't redefine my future. I just noticed that waiting had been a choice too, one I had been making quietly every day. And once I saw that, it became harder to pretend I wasn't choosing anything at all. I still don't think decisions have to feel clear, or powerful, or final. Some of them don't arrive as moments, they arrive as absences. The absence of waiting, the absence of hesitation, the absence of needing permission. Nothing suddenly made sense, but it didn't need to. I wasn't looking for meaning anymore, just momentum. And even that came gently, not as a breakthrough, not as a declaration, just as a shift I noticed after it had already happened.